I want to share this one with you. I want to share this thought with you because I had a conversation with my athletes about this. I had a block session on Monday just gone. And one of the block sessions that I'd done was just rubbish. Block runs I'd done was just rubbish. I was trying too hard. I was trying to be fancy, and it just didn't come out right. So she asked me, "How did you overcome that? How did you know that previous block session went bad, knowing that you had to go and do another one, and not think about or worry if it was going to screw up again?" And I said to her, "That's a good question. However, when I noticed I'd had a bad run, I went and sat down, and my mind started to tick. It started to say, oh, that was a bad run. What did I do wrong? How am I going to fix it? Have I gone past it? Have I not got what it takes anymore?" My mind started to talk to me. But what I told my athlete is, I chose not to have a conversation with the voices that were in my head. I chose not to have a conversation with the voices that were in my head. Instinctively, it's a natural reaction. When everything goes bad, you always blame yourself or the coach, and it starts in here. But what I noticed when it started in here, I sensed that it was happening. I could feel myself getting into a rut, and I was getting a little bit overwhelmed. And I sat down and I closed my eyes and I said to myself, another part of myself, I said, I'm going to ignore the voices that I can hear. And let me tell you something, these voices kept on prompting questions to me for about the best part of 2 to 3 minutes. But you know what I chose to do? I chose to keep walking away from the voices. Just like a friend who's nagging you at school, just like a friend who is annoying you in your house, you're like, oh my God, why am I dealing with this person? You're saying it in your head, and sometimes you would react to that person and it will cause a massive argument. I chose to ignore that person. And no matter how much those voices or that person that you're uncomfortable with kept on nagging at you, I chose to ignore it. I kept on ignoring it. I kept on ignoring it. I kept on ignoring it. But you may ask, how did you ignore it? I just didn't respond to it. For an example, the thought that came into my head was, that round was rubbish. Let me just take off my spikes and stop. Normally I'll be like, yeah, let me just take off the spikes and stop and then leave it till next week. But instead of taking off the spikes and stopping, I just didn't respond. I just kept my head clear. I didn't have a conversation with the voices that I kept on hearing. The ones that wanted an argument, the ones that wanted a problem, the ones that wanted me to stop. I just ignored them. And that same question kept on coming up in my head. Let's take off the spikes and stop D. Let's take off the spikes and stop D. But did I respond? I said no. I just kept quiet. I kept quiet. And the longer I kept quiet, the quieter, the less noisy, the less loud that voice became. And it got quieter and quieter and quieter and quieter until it disappeared. And then what that enabled me to do is go back to the starting blocks with a clear mind. Now, if I'd gone back to the starting blocks after being in an argument in my head, do you think I would have been able to run as well as I did previously? I'm sure you don't need me to tell you the answer. I'm sure many of you have had discussions in your head and you've got in a fight in your head and you've gone back to your classroom, your teacher, your workplace, your next lift in a uncomfortable state, in a wrong mental state. And therefore your session is severely compromised. I chose not to compromise my session by keeping my head clear. I hope this helps. As always, I'm sharing some knowledge on how I have dealt with situations and how you can now use this tool to help you deal with situations. And I hope it helps,